Mitosis and meiosis together. You all know that the way how to make a baby, right? So the mother drops an egg from her fallopian tube. This, if you have sex at the right time, and the father has good sperm, good swimmers, the sperm will make it to the egg. Some sperm will make it to the egg, and one of those sperm will fuse with the egg and fertilize it. Right? And how that happens can be very complicated. It's interesting to read about because it's not just the first sperm cell that gets there. But at any rate, one sperm will fertilize one egg in the end. And once that sperm, so each of these sex cells is haploid. This egg cell has one set of genetic information from the mom. This sperm has one set of genetic information from the dad. So when they fuse, this is called the zygote. This is the fertilized egg. This is a single cell, but it's a diploid cell that combines the genetic information from the dad and the genetic information of the mom. So we call it diploid. We call this diploid because there's two sets of genetic information in this cell. So this very first cell is called the zygote. These are gametes. They're sex cells. Sperm and egg are gametes. Gametes is the gender-neutral word for sex cell. So you don't have to say the sperm or the egg or sperm and egg. You could just say gamete if you're referring to sex cells in general. So gametes are haploid. They each carries one full set of genetic information. They fertilize each other and fuse to make a diploid zygote now that has one full set of genetic information from dad and one full set from mom. So that's a diploid cell. From this moment forward, this cell divides using mitosis, which is clonal cell division. So this cell makes clonal copies. It divides through mitosis into two identical daughter cells. And those divide into four identical daughter cells. And those divide, making 8 identical daughter cells, and each cell generation doubles the number of cells. And that's how the baby grows into an embryo, which grows into a fetus, which grows into a baby, which grows in, gets born and grows into a child, which grows into an adult. All mitosis, all of that mitosis. Now, it's hard to know exactly where to put this. Men and women make their sex cells at different times. Women are born with all the sex cells they'll ever have. So during this mitotic cell division, as the zygote is growing into a baby, females, you don't need to memorize this, but females are their ovaries, the cells in their ovaries are already undergoing meiosis to build their eggs. Men make new sperm their entire lives, so they use meiosis their entire lives. Women, they make, well, it's more complicated than that. So let's not worry about that. The point is that it actually is very interesting. There's a reason that women's fertility is more affected by age than men, and it's because they have cells that partially undergo meiosis and then they halt until puberty. And then at puberty, one of those cells that has started meiosis to become a sex cell will complete meiosis, and that's ovulation, and then if this egg isn't fertilized, there's a period to flush out the egg and the next one starts. So I think that's pretty interesting. But the point is, so mitosis develops the zygote into an adult, developing more and more cells to provide for growth. But in the ovaries and in the testes, there are cells undergoing meiosis. And meiosis is the production of the sex cells. So this baby, this zygote grew into maybe an adult man, and in his testes, he produced sperm via meiosis. And so all of his cells were diploid, except for the cells that underwent meiosis to become sperm. They are haploid. And then another woman somewhere started as a zygote. In her ovaries, meiosis happened to produce haploid sex cells, and again, the cycle continues. So this part is mitosis, growing from zygote to adult, and then the adults, and then along the way, some of these diploid cells undergo meiosis to make haploid cells again, which then confuse to make another diploid cell. So this chart shows you why you cannot have, why meiosis has to involve cutting in half the genetic information, right? Because if these cells were diploid, if this was 2N and this was 2N, and they fertilized each other, this would be 4N. So the next generation of people would all be 4N, or would have 4 copies of genetic information. And then if their cells again didn't cut their genetic information in half, their sex cells would also be 4N. So another 4N sperm with a 4N cell would make an 8N zygote. So then that means the next generation of people would have 8 copies of genetic information. And again, if you didn't cut that genetic information in half, their sex cells would be 8N. They fuse and make 16N. You can see how the DNA keeps collecting. If you're going to combine 2 people's genetic information, you have to cut the genetic info in half so that you have a normal amount of genetic information when the 2 sex cells fuse. All right, so that's bringing mitosis and meiosis together. Now let's bring together meiosis with inheritance.